Hello and welcome to the PC Pro podcast, which is live on Google Hangouts, at least while Google Hangout still lives with us. I am Tim Danton, Editor-in-Chief of PC Pro, and with me today I have Barry Collins.
Hello, Tim.
And Darian Gray-Smith.
Hello.
Hello. So, shall we kick off, chaps? Let's go straight into your story, Barry, because a certain man has been speaking about certain things.
Specific there, Tim. Yes, this is Steve Wozniak, who barely goes a month without telling Apple what they should be doing. This time he has taken aim at this rumour that Apple is going to ditch the 3.5mm headphone jack in its latest iPhone, which is due out in a couple of weeks' time, I believe, or due to be announced in a couple of weeks' time anyway. So there's this long-running rumour that Apple is going to remove the headphone jack and replace it with its own Lightning connector. And the idea of this is to make the phone thinner. Because obviously having to accommodate a whole 3.5mm makes the handset unacceptably wide. This was actually rumoured, I think, to happen in the last generation of iPhones and never actually occurred. This could just be one of those Apple rumours that never actually materialises. But in case it does, Mr. Wozniak says he's not too impressed with the idea, says that he has some very specific headphones that he uses himself that are moulded to his own head, or moulded to his own ears, shall I say. And he feels a lot of people would like the option to continue using their headphones, and Apple shouldn't be cutting them off.
Well, if it really does kind of go the way that that the rumours say, you can guarantee that Apple will offer a Lightning to 3.5mm adapter, and they'll only charge you $39.99 or whatever, so you can continue plugging in your £10 headphones.
Okay, so I suppose there's about three different issues here, aren't there? So one is it time for the 3.5mm standard to be retired? What's our thinking on this, guys?
No.
Yeah.
I thought we got time for this week's podcast.
No, I see a lot of people. I mean, increasingly, people using Bluetooth headphones. It's actually quite it's becoming not exactly a rarity, but it's becoming one of those things. You notice, or I notice, when someone is sitting there physically tethered to their phone by a cable.
Really?
I think Yeah, well, I mean, I move in slightly, rarefied circles, perhaps, and I maybe get the tube at funny times between funny destinations. But no, I mean, I definitely everyone I know who I'd call a muso, an audiophile. I think they've got some sort of Bluetooth headphones now, and the only reason, I mean, I carry around a wired pair just in case the batteries run out, because that's the big shortcoming of Bluetooth, of course. But in general, I mean, I think the 3.5mm socket is a bit of a dinosaur.
Well, I have to say, down here in Sussex, the cutting edge of technology, I see wired headphones the entire time. I very rarely see people with Bluetooth headphones. And you say for audiophiles, but Bluetooth, I know Bluetooth standards have got better and the bandwidth has got better in recent generations, but in terms of pure audio quality, Bluetooth is still well below.
I would have to look into that, and I know there is an updated audio format, audio standard for Bluetooth, which promises the best fidelity you can get. But to be honest, I mean, maybe audiophile is the wrong word. Maybe I should say music lover, or even though that actually means it's just a literal translation. But I mean, it's not necessarily about people who sit around trying to get the absolute, the perfect transparency and the perfect stereo soundstage. It's more about people who like to have music with them wherever they go. When they're walking down the street or getting on the train or whatever. And there, to be honest, I mean, we listen to MP3s. We've already kind of given up the war on trying to get the best sound quality. I think Bluetooth is absolutely good enough, and I'd have to look into it. I think it's just as good.
I think
certainly Steve Wozniak was saying that he felt it wasn't, and he was trumpeting because he wasn't saying outright that Apple is wrong to make this move, but he was saying that the current Bluetooth standard isn't good enough for his ears, and he wants to wait until the next standard, basically.
Yeah, whenever people say things like this, I'm not really going to listen to you until you've done a double-blind test, because audio is one of those things that you can really persuade yourself that X sounds better than Y, and and then people go behind the scenes and switch them over, and you'll still be singing the praises of what now turns out to be Y. It's very, very psychologically influenced.
I think I've got two specific objections to this plan, though. One is that Apple's motivation for doing, well, there's two Apple motivations for doing this. One is to seemingly make the handset even thinner, and there really is no need to do that anymore. The handsets are as thin as anyone could possibly need, and if anything, I would urge Apple and all other smartphone manufacturers to make their phones bigger and incorporate a bigger battery, which for me is by far the most outstanding feature that I want. The other is that Apple's motivation for doing this, is because it can sell headphones based on the Lightning connector, which it would take a royalty for. And so, this kind of standardization, the 3.5mm jack is probably the biggest, most widespread standard in the entire tech industry. Everybody uses it. There is no real alternative. And to start messing around with that and having different connectors for headphones in every device you use absolutely fills me with bile.
I think the thinness argument isn't quite as daft as it sounds, because it's not really, it's not really about thinness as I understand it. Yes, obviously the size of that little hole does require a certain thickness, but as you say, it's very thin. You can squeeze one of those sockets into a very, very narrow piece of design, but you also need to have, the protrusion inside, and you need to have the analog conversion thing there, and it does actually start to eat up a bit of space and a bit of like extra electronics that's needed to do that, that DAC, that digital to analog conversion. And if you can push that out to the headphones, I can understand that might make your phone, for example, lighter, cheaper to manufacture. Might even give you a bit more space to pack a battery in, which is something we know Apple likes to do. As to your other point, I certainly agree that Lightning is a scam. Frankly, I'll just come out and say it. I think it's a ridiculous idea that we're supposed to use this proprietary connector. Oh yes, and yeah, if Apple does start pushing Lightning headphones, I will be first in the queue to grumble about it. But if you push forward a little bit, I don't know what the future of Lightning is. Apple started using USB Type-C on the MacBook, and some of the newest Android phones have USB Type-C, and that is a proper open universal standard which does much the same job as Lightning. And I like to think that we may not be too far away from a world where you can connect headphones at just as well as anything else to that USB socket you find at the bottom of your Android phone and hopefully soon your iPhone. And that's not a bad idea at all.
It isn't. However, a lot of the time I seem to be spending actually charging my phone. And if I wish to be listening to music at the same time, then that could be annoying if my
absolutely.
Well, we will come later on to something that a bit of work that's being done in Android that might improve your battery life. But also, we didn't actually queue this up to talk about in the podcast. But did you see there's been a breakthrough at MIT about a new kind of way of making lithium-ion batteries, which they say should be doubling energy density by the end of 2017, I think. But we'll have to wait until we actually see it to.
Okay, but is that in theory, or is that because there are so many battery technologies that we hear about? And this is going to improve things. Everything's going to be radically different. Just a year away.
Yeah, well, this is a bit different because they started with the production line and actually tried to kind of work out what you could do to the existing process rather than taking a blue sky kind of theoretically what could we do if we had no constraints and spherical cows in a vacuum kind of thing. And so and MIT is not some startup that wants to make a splash. It's quite a persuasive set of initials, so I'm cautiously optimistic.
I've come almost full circle on this issue in that I've always said that the company that manages to crack the next generation battery technology that can make a phone last a week like they used to will be, miles ahead. They would sell every phone in their inventory. And now I'm beginning to wonder, because it has been so long since there has been any decent breakthrough in this, and with the resources that companies like Samsung and Apple have got, I find it increasingly difficult to believe that nobody could have pushed battery technology any further. And I'm beginning my conspiracy theory hat here is that it suits the phone manufacturers to have these weak batteries, because after a year, 18 months, you're desperate to replace your phone because the batteries just don't last. My year-old, not even year-old now, Galaxy S6 barely gets through a working day now without it having to be topped up. And already I'm yearning for a new handset with my one still got 14-15 months left on contract, and I think it suits them perfectly to have this situation because they know that it's one of the big motivators for people to upgrade their phone.
Well, I think also, I mean, people say, in poll after poll, you talk to them and they say battery life is super, super important. And then they get into the shop and they hold a really, really shiny, lovely, slim phone, and that consideration isn't immediate. It goes out the window. They're not holding it when it's dead after, an hour and a half of use. They're holding it while it's beautiful and attractive. And I think, as a species, we humans are very easily persuaded to forget, what the thing that we said was the most important yesterday when we're confronted with a beautiful, shiny piece of technology. And they know that.
Yeah, I think there are so many things that can make people upgrade that the battery... I think you are being paranoid, Barry. Sorry. Not for the first time. Just one, I should say, if people are listening to this live, then do submit questions, or, well, not questions, just general thoughts, corrections,
abuse,
anything you'd like, basically, via the Q&A panel that Hangouts offers.
Yes, Mike Bookham has. Sorry, Tim. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just so excited that someone's interacting with what I was saying earlier. It's about interference to the analog signal that occurs inside the handset. Very good point. Thank you, Mike Bookham. Yes, that's another reason why. That's the reason why you kind of want to use digital interconnects as far as possible with any kind of audio application, because interference, it is bad and does degrade the quality. If you can keep it digital as far as possible, then then you're keeping the quality to it's a bit like, it's like having fiber to the cabinet almost. If you've got digital to the headphones, then there's only a little bit of scope for degradation.
DTTH. We can have great a new set of initials. The other side of the story, Barry kind of alluded to it briefly, but it's this idea of the elder statesman of these companies, so a founding father like Steve Wozniak, weighing in and telling the new guys how they should be running it. And I'm sure he was just responding perfectly naturally to a question that was asked of him. But what do we think is the correct role? And Bill Gates, for example, manages to stay almost silent at Microsoft. Is that the right way?
Well, Bill Gates is a rather different kind of character to Steve Wozniak, because I think Bill Gates actually can fairly be said to have sort of, driven the corporate personality of Microsoft in a way that Wozniak didn't. I mean, Woz was, he was the engineer and Steve Jobs was the visionary, and they made a very powerful duo. And like you say, I think Woz would be horrified by the idea that he was standing up and saying, "No, Apple, you're wrong about this." I think he's actually he's quite a modest man, but people keep coming to him and asking his opinions, and what's he supposed to do? Whereas Bill Gates, I think, is kind of kept behind the scenes partly because he knows full well that if he once goes into print and says Microsoft, I think, is making a mistake and should do this, then it completely undermines Satya Nadella, because Bill Gates, is still seen as, he would instantly be seen as the real power running Microsoft if he gave the slightest hint of that.
Yeah, well, and the difference is that Gates is still actively involved in Microsoft and pretty much has been the entire way through, whereas Wozniak has not been inside Apple for decades. So it's a lot easier, as you say, for Wozniak to hold forth of an opinion, because he's not accountable inside to shareholders or anybody else, and has none of that internal politics that you just mentioned to worry about. I'm not quite sure he's the wallflower you present him as. I think he's quite keen whenever there's a microphone stuck in front of him to chirp up an opinion, whether it's supportive of Apple or not. But does it help Apple? I don't think Apple really care. I think it makes almost no difference. I suspect if you asked the average man in the street, the Steve Wozniak name recognition would be in the low 1 or 2%. So I think it makes no difference to Apple.
I think it'd be higher than Tim Cook, though. I think Steve Wozniak is one of is the most warmly regarded and best known surviving member of kind of the Apple of the 80s and 90s that built the edifice that stands before us today. I mean, I think Wozniak in a way speaks for the old Apple of the hobbyists and so on, which the current company has maybe a complicated relationship with.
I'm just trying to think of other statesmen, because I posed the question very much with Steve Wozniak and Bill Gates in mind. But I'm just trying to think, who else is there that sits on the periphery and shouts at their previous companies?
Oh well, there's Linus Torvalds. I mean, he wasn't
yeah,
exactly Linux wasn't exactly a company, but I mean, he's quite forthright about it. He says, I'm just an individual. This is my distribution. These are my ideas. If you don't like them, go off and do your own thing. That's the whole point of Linux. But at the same time, he knows that he has an awful lot of pull, and he's not hesitant to speak up when he thinks something is stupid, which he does quite often.
Yeah, I wonder actually. Maybe this is more a symptom of the media and the fact how desperate, especially websites are to grab headlines and to get traffic to their sites. As they should be, I guess. But maybe that's what we're seeing.
We've talked so far for 15 minutes straight about something which hasn't actually been announced.
I take your point. However, I think the forthcoming loss of 3.5 mils. I think that's very much written in the hills. I don't know.
Well, was that a quote from Love Is All Around? I agree, and I think if anyone's going to drive it, it's going to be Apple. They're the ones who are always the first to ditch these things, and if it does push us towards a more wireless world as opposed to a more locked into Lightning world, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, but think of all those old headsets that are just going to be completely redundant suddenly.
Well, I'm actually sitting right now. I'm sitting in the old podcast studio where we used to record the podcast when it was weekly last year, and I am surrounded by. From where I'm sitting, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 at least pairs of headphones, all kind of wired, and they're all sort of battered and dusty and not that great and so on. And, I'm not. Yeah. And I don't think I'm sure Steve Wozniak has his beloved personal pair of headphones, which are of great significance to him. But it is technology. You can't get sentimental about these things. They're cheap plastic, and they will be forgotten as soon as they're replaced.
Well, I'm not sure if that's the environmentally friendly position.
No, technology isn't, unfortunately.
But let's move on to the next subject, which is, let me ask you, Darian, whether it's time for the social network companies to grow up.
To grow up, you say? I think if they did, they wouldn't be social network companies anymore. They'd be banks and database hosting organisations and so on. Amazon, for example, grew up in the sense of offering its web services rather than just sending you books. But I've got a little bit distracted. So social media services. What we mean by that, at least I presume what you mean by that, is to do with the Home Affairs Select Committee report into how terrorists are using Facebook Facebook and other social media sites to spread propaganda and to communicate. So if you are interested in joining a terrorist group, you can maybe find a channel on Facebook or find a person to follow on Twitter and get information and kind of reach out to them in a way that wouldn't be possible without these platforms. So Keith Vaz, who is the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, done this report, says basically, and I quote, huge corporations like Google, Facebook and Twitter, with their billion-dollar incomes, are failing to tackle this threat and passing the buck by hiding behind their supranational legal status. And what he wants is, what the report actually proposes is a police defence force which basically monitors social media to try to identify terrorist contacts and to require the social networks themselves to publish quarterly statistics detailing how many terrorist accounts have been taken down. Which is an idea which I think probably comes from a well-meaning place. But I'm sure Barry is already multiplying objections as to why it can't possibly work in the real world.
It's the idea. There have been so many over the years of these parliamentary select committee reports into the dangers of the internet. They always invariably involve the phrase "the Wild West," and it is just shockingly. The amount of money and time that is wasted on these things, and to come up with conclusions like that is just ludicrous. It's an actual scandal in terms of in this day when recession and I've forgotten the word, but
Brexit.
well, we can't spend any money.
Thank
you. That so much time and effort and money is wasted by MPs to hash these same old tired conclusions that the social networks are the evil of everything, and we should have some kind of internet police force that deals with all of this. It's just tiresome. It really is.
Well, if these are, if these are the same old tired arguments, though, I mean, is there a fresh one? Is there a better answer, or is it just something we've got to live with?
Well, yeah, it's so difficult because I don't think that if you're going across Facebook or Twitter, you're likely to come across terrorist propaganda unless you're seeking it out. And so, even if they do manage to remove this from the social networks, there's some magic bullet they could fire tomorrow to take down every terrorist post on Facebook, every group, every little organisation. They would find another way. This is the nature of the internet. There will always be somewhere else to host this stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's shooting fish in a barrel. And I'm not saying that means nothing should be done about it, that you just throw your hands up in the air and get on with it. But I think that the pointing the fingers at the social networks the entire time and saying that these are the breeding grounds for terrorists, it doesn't ring true to me. I think you have to be looking for this stuff.
I think that may be true, but I mean, I think maybe playing devil's advocate a little bit. If you're an impressionable 15-year-old or something, and you are going, oh, I'm fed up with my family, my culture, my friends. I want to be a radical, and you go onto Facebook and you type in how to become a terrorist. If you get no hits and you get no bites, it's quite conceivable to me that you'll go, oh well, never mind, and go and listen to My Chemical Romance for a bit, and 6 months down the line, the whole thing will be forgotten. Whereas if there is somebody there grooming you and introducing you to to people, then actually that could be a problem.
Okay, if I lose my Facebook account in about a week's time, you'll know why. But right now, I'm just typing in how to be a terrorist into Facebook, and let's see what comes up. Talk about yourselves. The first thing in search is an article posted by one of my friends, which is a news article.
Facebook search, isn't it? Yes.
A news article about how Obama saying nuclear terrorism would change our worlds. There's a public post from Al Jazeera, which is slightly controversial in itself. A Business Insider article, an article from The Independent, an article from jpost.com. So in other words, if I go and search how to become a terrorist or whatever, it's not likely to come up top of the list.
I don't think that's
Facebook.
A very scientific experiment, to be honest. I know you did your best. I know you worked hard to control for all the factors, but I mean, I think okay. Let's say you go onto Twitter and say I've had it with with this society. I want to blow people up. Let's say, and I don't I'm not making any. I don't want to make a generalization here, but let's say just based on the profile of terrorists on social media. Let's say you post it in Arabic. It's quite possible that someone who's interested in recruiting people might be looking for that, and they might reach out to you in a way that with the greatest possible respect, you, Barry Collins, might not get the same kind of bite.
I'm a very angry man, Darren. You should.
You don't need radicalising, I
I
know.
think we're going into slightly dangerous territory, so I'm just going to pull this back a little bit and just say, do we think, though, that, for example, YouTube has said that they take their role in combating the spread of extremist material very seriously, and that they remove the content. And basically, Facebook said almost precisely the same thing. As soon as they see anything that's related or supports terrorist activity, then they deal with it. They get rid of it. I'm not quite sure what else we can be asking these companies to do.
Well, no, and they also, I think I'm maybe misquoting, but I think Keith Vaz said these companies, they only have hundreds of people dealing with this, and I sort of thought, well, that's pretty good. Hundreds of people devoted to something that is not basically a profit centre for them. Sounds all right to me. I think they're making a good effort. I'm sure, Darian's right. I'm sure there are ways to find this stuff on Facebook and Twitter. My experiment wasn't the most scientific thing ever done, but I don't think it's right there in front of your face the entire time. I don't think people are being groomed unless they're searching out for this stuff. And B, they will go elsewhere. There will be another place to find it if they manage to take it off Facebook and Twitter. It's naive to think otherwise.
I think the key thing to realise is that you need to have something incredibly joined up. I'm a parent governor in a school, and we've had briefings on a briefing on how to spot for potential radicalization of children, and that's what you need to have. You need to have that joining up with technology, joining up around the world for this to work. Because it's not a simple path with someone as you're typing in, how do I become a terrorist into Google? There is a kind of a pathway to it, but it's so much subtler than that. So you need everything to join up together. I think it's one committee saying, we should do this.
I think that's a bit of a perfect world fallacy, though. I mean, really the question, I don't think anyone believes that kind of running the terrorists off Facebook and Twitter is going to end terrorism. But would it be better than what we have now? I mean, yes, you can say that kids or people who with grievances will find ways of getting in touch with terrorists, but will so many of them? Will it be so easy? The reach of Twitter and Facebook is what makes them concerning. A first thing you want to shut down, because after that, you drive them a little bit further underground and you make it a little bit harder, and you reduce the number of people who are going to make contact. Is my guess. And that's for the hundreds of people. I understand. Yes, I understand. If I ran a company and I had hundreds of people doing this, I'd think I was doing a pretty good job. But obviously, the point he's making is that there are millions upon millions of messages being posted every day, and it's not possible for any department of any company, no matter how large, to keep track of that. I mean, I don't really understand why we can't crowdsource it a bit better. I don't understand why we can't have a button to silently report something as look into this. I think this might be a dodgy post, and and help use the the millions of eyes we have on these posts to maybe help.
But my understanding of this problem, though, is that it's genuinely not like the Al Qaeda page on Facebook or the Islamic State Twitter account. They don't recruit in that fashion. It's by people forming networks, and it's more subtle grooming, often combined with real life meetings or whatever, or introductions from people in the real world. It's not an obvious recruitment statement. It's not like Disney putting up a Facebook page and attracting viewers and likes. It's more subtle than that, and so that sort of crowdsourcing idea of people being able to shut down terrorist supporting Facebook sites is probably not going to work unless
Well, I hear you, and I do absolutely believe that, yes, I mean, people do, go about these things in very clever and very subtle ways. But one thing that keeps shining out from, if you read news stories about how criminals get caught, not just terrorists, but in general, a lot of people aren't that smart and they're not that careful. And again, I think, even if the clever, the subtle, insidious kind of threats wouldn't be dealt with in that way, I do think there are probably quite a few people out there who are just like, hey guys, want to make a bomb and leave it somewhere. And, they might be serious. And again, it wouldn't solve the problem completely, but it might make a dent in it.
Okay, I think we should definitely draw an end to it there. Actually, Giacomino, I don't know if I said that right, but anyway, Giacomino Parkinson has basically said the internet is like water, and I think that's a very good point. As a way of trying to stop things, good luck. It's far too powerful for that. He also asks, I'm assuming he's a he. He also asks, why are you giving up on Google Hangout Live? We're not giving up on it. It is giving up on us. Google has announced that it's going to end Google Hangouts in, I think it's the end of September, isn't it?
I think it's soon. It's soon anyway. Yeah.
It's soon. So we will have to find an alternative home, basically, for the podcast.
Yogurt pots and strings.
I know that's added to one of your many things that you were thinking about, Daryl. I don't know if you got any updates for us.
Oh, what, on where we're going to move the podcast to?
Yeah.
Oh, no, none. I mean, obviously, the Google Hangouts, Google is saying move to YouTube Live. I've had a look at it, and I haven't actually done any trials yet. It doesn't look like it does exactly the same thing. It doesn't look like you can have a video, an audio conference of like all of us being in our respective offices in different parts of the country and stream that live simultaneously. No. But they might have updated it. There might be something going on. I haven't done it yet, Tim. I'm sorry.
Oh, for goodness sake. There are commercial tools, but it's it's the entry, it's the barrier to people. So the beauty of Google Hangouts is that anyone basically who's got a Google account can come and join us. As soon as we go to something like, I don't know, Citrix, let's say, you've got to log in properly again, I believe. So it could be more difficult. But again, we haven't properly looked into it. We do need to. All right, let us actually give the final word on this. Actually, you may know the answer to this. Alistair Holmes asks, doesn't the government already have facilities in the form of GCHQ and SOCA's e-crime unit to look for these things? Either of you know the answer to that?
Well, it does, but obviously it doesn't want to spend its resources if it can push the problem off onto the multinationals.
Yeah, I suspect it won't be hundreds either. From what I remember, Barry, of the police's collective numbers, because we've looked into this in the past in Peterborough, it's tens, isn't it, who are actually dedicated to this problem?
Yeah, it may have scaled up a bit since then, but I'd imagine the collective e-crime units at certainly in the police force will be substantially smaller than even one of Facebook or Twitter's teams handling these kind of things.
Okay, well, I think we've safely solved the problem of terrorism.
Yeah, so, that's done.
Let's instead move on to I don't know, corporate snooping. Barry, over to you.
Yes, so HP have relaunched 2 new laptops, in fact, that come with what they call SureView technology, which basically prevents people like me looking over your shoulder on a train or airplane seat and seeing what's on your laptop screen. It basically works by seemingly shutting off the light that emerges to the side and dimming the screen slightly so that it reduces the viewing angles to a 70-degree arc that's in front of the viewer, so that basically the person next to you cannot read what's upon your screen. I've done some digging, and to be honest, I've not worked out quite how they pull this off and what the technology behind it is. All the press releases on it all seem a bit opaque, and none of the tech sites appear to have dug very deep with it. But
it's probably something to do with polarizing, isn't it?
Yes, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
And
that's what 3M does, because 3M has a laptop screen filter that you can fit retroactively.
Yes, but this, to be clear, is not one of those stick-on screens. This is a sort of built into the electronics of the screen. So you press F2 on your keyboard to put it into this SureView mode, and so it avoids that problem of having a permanently dark screen when you've got one of those sticky filters attached, or one of those ridiculous boxes that I've seen people use occasionally on the trains, where you basically look like a photographer.
Did you ever used to have one of those laptops in the 80s that were, like the size of a brick, and they had the little LCD screen where you had to, even if you were looking at it square on, the top of the screen was too bright and the bottom of the screen was too dark, and if you moved your head an inch to the side, it went completely black as far as you could see. And it's sort of funny that they worked and worked and worked to improve display technology and just kind of make it so we have these fantastic viewing angles now, and then it's like, oh, actually that's a problem, we need to undo that.
Yeah,
but it's a problem, isn't it? I mean, you've had that situation, haven't you, Barry?
Well, I have sat on trains back and forth from London numerous times, looking at the screen of the person next to me, because you invariably cannot when someone's got a screen open next to you, and the amount of sensitive stuff I've seen on emails or internal intranets and stuff like that, where people are doing. I've seen police officers discussing cases. I've seen lawyers discussing cases. I've seen accountants discussing very sensitive financial details, and it's amazing that that these companies and these people are often there with like the security tags that they the smart cards that you have to plug into laptop to activate it, and yet they're sitting next to an idiot like me on the train discussing these, or have screens displaying these most sensitive of case details in times. It's I think people are extraordinarily lax about it.
It's a surprise, really, that no one's come up with this before. It sounds like, I say it sounds like it's obviously been an issue for a long time. I've seen people using their computers on trains and planes and so on. And normally, in fact, 100% of the time, I think, I haven't paid any attention, because even if it is some incredibly sensitive and confidential bit of information, it's about a person I don't know, or about a stock I don't recognise, or about a chemical that I wouldn't be able to synthesise in my own home even if I wanted to. So kind of no harm done to an extent. But yeah, it's a very obvious hole in the system.
People leak information all the time anyway. I know I've heard people actually normally are talking, and they seem to have this belief that no one will have who can overhear them can somehow understand what they're talking about, or has a link to the industry. I know I've been on trains with people in the same industry as me talking about an industry problem, and it's highly indiscreet. And I'm sure other people do it all the time. I think this is the problem, that we are leakers, all of us.
Well, that's why the most effective I think the most effective means of hacking a business is social engineering. Is just kind of going in and talking to people, and they'll assume that you must have a reason to be there, or they'll assume that they know you, or you know them, or and they'll just share information. We're not socially good at it's embarrassing to kind of go, oh, hang on, I'm not sure I can tell you this, or I'm not sure I can speak to you in public or in front of these people. So we don't. We're not geared up to be secure. We are, as every security analyst will say, the weak link in any system is the human. Get rid of them, and you're laughing.
Okay, so let's give HP some proper publicity then for this new thing. When are those laptops coming out, Barry?
I believe they're out. They are. Where are we? Let's go back to the page. They are the HBook EliteBook 1040 and the EliteBook 840, and I believe they are both out. I think there's a couple of drawbacks of it. Is that it restricts the resolution to full HD. There's a slight hit on the battery life, oddly, when you're in this mode, even though it reduces the brightness of the screen somewhat to make it work. And for me, that could be a problem, because the one place where you do need screen brightness right up is when you're in a train seat next to a window, or on an airplane in a window seat where the light is exceedingly bright. So I do wonder if people might end up switching this off because you can't see your screen when it's dimmed, in those scenarios where you're most likely to leak the information. But obviously, not having tested it, I'll withhold opinion until such a point.
Yeah. Okay. So if you want it, then you need to look out for SureView technology,
which is ironically named because it's the one thing that it's like it should be Sure Don't View.
Yeah, I suppose they're going for the opposite of unsure view. Or I don't know. But according to research conducted by, I think it's the Pokemon Institute in Michigan, 9 out of 10 attempts to acquire sensitive business information using only visual means were successful. So
the Pokemon Institute, did you say?
Okay.
Oh, don't rise to it.
It's the Pokemon Institute. It's kind of like Pokemon, but with an N instead. Anyway, let's move swiftly on, shall we?
What happened there? I don't know.
Yes, it was a very bad joke that only people who'd previously heard of the Pokemon Institute will get. Okay, Darian, let's move on to our final topic, which is kind of our hot hardware of the month of the podcast, but not.
Yes, well, it could be hot hardware if you go out and buy a new Nexus phone soon, because we're talking about Android 7, codename Nougat, because of that alphabetical thing. The last one was called Marshmallow and so forth. So there's a new version of Android. It's out if you've got a Nexus device which receives upgrades straight from Google. If you are like Barry and me using Samsung, then well, I don't know, like maybe
best of luck.
Yeah, pick up a calendar in March and see how you're doing. So it's as is common with these upgrades. There's lots and lots of little things which aren't that interesting, and I don't really remember them because it's all been swept out of my head by the big new feature, which is split screen multitasking. In Nougat now, you can basically you can be using an app and then hold down, I think it's the overview button, and go and find another app and open that in a well, if you're using a phone in portrait mode, then you just have them stacked one on top of the other, and you can just switch back and forth between them, so you can see what's on the web page and type about it at the same time. For example,
I think it's mainly for tablets, that feature, isn't it? That's why they brought it in.
Well, I mean, I was actually thinking, I'm not so sure about this, because I've got a Galaxy S6, which is not a small phone, but it's not an enormous thing either, like the Nexus 6. But I mean, Google has decided. I've got some friends who work for Google, and they all have Nexus phones, and they're enormous. They're like surfboards. It's like I think Google has basically given up on tablets. I don't remember the last time we saw a brand new Android tablet that was worth getting excited about. So instead, they're just making the phones big enough to do double purpose, to serve both needs. And I think on a phone the size of the Nexus 6, it does make a degree of sense actually. So it's I wouldn't say it's just for tablets, but it is probably not for those dinky little Japanese phones that you see.
Darian, darling, can I just interrupt you there?
Yes.
Because multitasking is already in Android for Samsung handsets.
Yes, you've put your finger on one of the oddities here, because Google, well, I wouldn't say it's been dragging its feet exactly, but it hasn't implemented multitasking before, and because of the unique way it's distributed, Android allows handset manufacturers to build their own customizations in. So yeah, Samsung years ago, well, at least a year ago, I think probably 18 months, 2 years ago, has been offering split screen multitasking. So in a way, Android is only just catching up. I want to say the good news is that because now it's official, now everyone can have it, obviously, and it'll be properly supported in APIs and so on. So one would imagine that apps, will be able to detect when they're running in half screen mode and do something sensible accordingly. But yeah, you're right. I mean, this is an Android thing. It's like, oh, we've got this great new feature. Well, we had it here. Well, we're never going to get it over here. It is a bit difficult to explain to people what the current state of Android is, because it's about 10 different states at once.
Have you ever used it?
No, I haven't actually, because as you know, I have a Samsung. Oh, do you mean the Samsung split screen?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. I haven't used it deliberately. I've activated it by mistake once or twice, which has been which has been. I don't want to. Well, like I was saying earlier, I don't want to multitask. I don't want to split screen on my little phone. But if it were just a little bit bigger, I wouldn't really enjoy that qua phone. But I can see myself doing it, because it does get a bit annoying switching back and forth. Which actually brings me to another new feature in Nougat, which is you can now the little overview button that you press, and it brings up all the cards of your apps, and you can flick through them. A very, very simple thing, but if you double tap that now in Nougat, it will just switch you back to the last app you were using. So you can just go double tap, double tap, double tap, and in this way kind of multitask, but flip back and forth between two apps, which I think is probably a more practical way of doing things, to be honest. But
yeah,
I'll get to try it out for real if Samsung ever update my phone.
Well,
apart from,
I have a 6P, so I'll be able to. When will I be able
to?
Oh,
really? Well, then you should have it now, then, shouldn't you? It came out this week. Are you telling me that you've had Nougat and you didn't realise it, and you made me do the presentation even though I haven't got it?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be averse to that.
No, that's true.
No, I haven't got it. I'm gonna check for updates. I should have done that before this podcast.
Okay. Well, let's just quickly talk about one other feature. I mean, there's a couple of other features, but as we mentioned earlier on, battery life is a real bugbear of everybody in the entire world. And Marshmallow introduced a feature called Doze mode, where the phone recognises if it's sitting unattended on a table or whatever, and it dials back its energy usage as much as it can. So, for example, it doesn't keep blaring out wireless signal all the time. It kind of it checks more periodically for for new emails and so on. Nougat improves this with a system called Doze on the Go, which, very simply put, aims to recognise not only when it's sitting statically on a table, but when it's also in your pocket or in your bag. It may not be that sophisticated, actually, because I think it might be just when the screen's off and it's being bumped around. But yeah, so again, it will work less hard when it thinks you're not using the phone. So when you do want to use it, there should be more battery left. That's it.
If that makes any tangible difference, I'll be astonished.
Well, I do kind of feel that already we're at, with Marshmallow, we do have a kind of a rather strange situation where I'll have my phone in my pocket for between 9 in the morning and 5 p.m. and I go, oh, that's great, I've still got 80% battery left. Then I start using it, and 5 minutes later, it's down to 40. So there will be that kind of strange. That will only exacerbate, I think, that kind of strange dual characteristic of battery consumption on Android.
I put my phone into battery saving mode pretty much the moment I leave the house if I'm going out for any duration of time, because it's the only way you can get for a day, really. And I mean, I have down here in the boonies, it's if you wander into an area where 3G or 4G signal is poor, then you can just kiss goodbye to your battery still, because it's just zonks for it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to kind of give Google credit for doing what they can in software to improve battery life, and obviously there's a real limit to what they can do. A wireless radio, and a screen just consume energy. You can't get around that. But I think it's nice that they understand this and they're working on it, but it ultimately does need to be sold from a different direction, I think. Okay, let's have a bonus feature. Let's talk about a feature that isn't in Nougat. That sounds useful, doesn't it? No, in the developer, it's because in the developer previews of Nougat, there was a new night mode, which if you've got an iPhone or an iPad, then you already know about Night Shift, which is Apple's technology that just replaces the cold blue colours on your screen with a warmer orangey tint late at night, which is supposed to help your brain kind of chill out and relax and get a good night's sleep. Whereas I tend to go to bed and just have a final read of Twitter or whatever on my phone, and the harsh blue light shines through my eyes and into my soul and keeps me staring wide awake until 2 in the morning, because Android doesn't have such an equivalent function. Actually, I'm exaggerating, because you can get an app that does it, but it's not built into Android. It was built into, as I say, the developer preview of Nougat, but it's been taken out. So all those of you who are, and I'm sure there's many of you who gaze enviously at your friends' iPhones and iPads with their warm sunsetty glow as the day draws to a close, I'm afraid you'll have to wait a little bit longer or install an app called Twilight.
Yeah, again, I'm sure the light does make some difference to sleep patterns, but I imagine the biggest reason why people get disrupted sleep if they're looking at their phone late at night is because they're checking work email or something that stimulates them mentally rather than the light from the screen. But
yeah, it's true. I do I do tend to see things on Twitter that annoy me, so that's not going to help me let go of the cares of the day.
Yeah. I honestly think people just need to stop this. I know we've talked, and actually the latest issue of PC Pro has had talks about just streamlining areas of your digital life, and I just think we need to. I hate the phrase digital detox. We just need to be a bit more conscious about it, because we use these phones all the time without thinking. We show bad habits to our children by using phones at the table. We don't concentrate on the television shows we're watching because we're too busy tweeting our partner Darian. So
hey, she's tweeting me back. It's not like I'm tweeting into the void.
So I don't know. I just think it kind of feels like we're still in our teenage years. We've got all these amazing things we can do, so let's use them all the time, and never mind the consequences. I think we're losing something. That's my
sleep, Tim. Sleep.
We're losing sleep, but I just think we're being stupid. I do think we're being stupid. I think we just have to be a bit conscious sometimes.
Well, it's an addiction, isn't it? I mean, it is. People say that you get a little. I mean, scientists, not just people on the street, say that
Bobby
you get
Davro.
a little. Yeah, exactly. Bobby Davro. He says that you get a little release of dopamine when you consume a little nugget of information, when you feel you've learnt something or interacted with someone, and it's kind of I want more. It's like eating one salt and vinegar crisp. You then immediately want another one. Ditto tweets. So it's not just about it's not just about being stupid. I think it taps into something in all of us that we need to be. If you want to break the cycle, I think you maybe need to make a bit of a conscious effort to do so.
Yeah, well, basically that's what I'm arguing for, is that I think people should make that conscious effort. Barry, I know you actually take your phone down. You leave your phone charging downstairs, don't you?
Yep, absolutely. I don't, and I do make a conscious effort not to look at the phone for an hour before I go to bed, because you'll find it hard to believe, but I get very wound up by things I see on Twitter or whatever. And I think at that time of night as well is when people, often they've been down the pub and sort of tweeting inflammatory nonsense, or question times on the telly, and people are tweeting about the stuff that's come off of the back of that. And for the last hour of the evening, I tend to just watch something on TV and I take my smartwatch off, put the smartphone on the side, and try not to get any disturbance at all, just to sort of, as I said a minute ago, switch off mentally rather than switch off the phone itself.
Yeah, I don't do anything like that. I probably should.
Yep, I think everyone should. I'm going to start a charter. I'm going to campaign for it to be part of the new Labour manifesto or something. I think that'll work. Just one point: if you have got a Nexus, if you've got a Nexus phone, I think it is if you've got a 6P, a 5X, or anyway, a recent one, then you can actually force an over-the-air update for your Nexus device, but you've got to go to developers.google.com/android/nexus/OTA. For everyone else, you have to just wait for Google to, in its grace, allow you to have the download.
It's not Google, it's Samsung and Sony and Huawei and LG. You mean other Nexus owners?
Because Google doesn't put it out to everyone. It kind of it drips it out. I think it's
just a developer release so far, isn't it? It's not the actual public release.
I think it is the.
That's why you've got to go to the developer site.
No, it is the public release. There is a public release, but what I believe they do is they release it and then they wait to see if there are any bugs. For the first 100,000 devices, then they do another 200,000, and they do it like that. Maybe they do it by country as well, but they do do it in waves anyway. But yes, it is available to Android owners if they want to force it. But everyone else, like you say, it's kind of it's why I bought a Google actually. It's why I bought a Nexus in the end. It's so I could get the benefits of the updates when they came out.
Yeah, it is one of the biggest weaknesses, I think, of the way that Android has been developed and distributed. I mean, it's not necessarily so much about the features; it's about security updates is the concern. I mean, I believe and hope that if there were a major hole in Android, then Samsung would rush me out the update quite quickly for my Galaxy S6. But if I were using a phone that's a couple of years older, if I was still using my old S4 or even my old S2, which some people do, we're not all technology addicts who have to upgrade every 18 months. I'm not at all so confident that those would still get the requisite patches.
Okay, great, thank you. Right, let's bring this Android excitement to its end. Let's have a vote. Does anybody care about Android 7? Yes or no? Darian and Barry. Darian first.
I do care. I'm not super excited about it. I mean, it's not one of those things where I'm, going on XDA developers to see how I can get a hacked ROM onto my Galaxy S6 tomorrow. When it arrives, it'll be nice. There's a couple of nice features, but Android is mature now. I think it's going to need something bigger and more dramatic, if such a thing is possible or even desirable. To cause another stampede of excitement like we used to get with what was it? What was the one before Honeycomb? Must have begun with G. Gingerbread. That's right. Everyone wanted gingerbread, but now it's it's fine. It's warm. It's a good thing, but I will not be sitting up hitting refresh tonight.
Okay, so that's a no. It's not hot. Barry, hot or not?
No, not really. I can't see any. I mean, if the standout feature is multitasking, which has been on my phone for a while, and I've never used it because it's pointless, then I'm struggling to get excited as well. So it just sounds like a minor release to me, and yeah.
I can just hear that excitement in your voice. You didn't really need to say anything, just to make a sound, and I get it. Okay, I will update, but none of the things you said have filled me with excitement, Darian. I'm sorry. Generally that's not true. Obviously, whenever you speak, I'm excited, but this particularly, no, it's not quite there. Just in case, I'm sure nobody does rely on us for information on whether their Nexus can get the 7 update. But for the sake of completion, if you have a Pixel C, if you have a 6P, if you have a 5X, if you have a Nexus 7 Wi-Fi, no, not Nexus 7, a Nexus 9 Wi-Fi, or indeed Nexus Player. What is a Nexus Player? I've not heard of that.
Anyway. It's a really, really cool Nexus. It swaggers into the club. I don't know. Is it one of those things like the Nexus Q and the Nexus What's It that they introduced a couple of years ago? And
maybe.
By the way, I don't know if you saw, but Mike Bookham already told us all that on the comments. So thanks, Mike.
Well, he was the one who prompted me to have a look. Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. I was going into granular detail for people who really probably don't care anyway. All right, let's call that the end of today's podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much to Mike and to Martin Hazel as well for his entry, and Giacomino and Alistair for taking part with their questions as well. Until our next podcast even. Goodbye.
Bye.